So about 3 months ago, I had to make one of the more difficult decisions that I've ever had to make in business. And I don't, maybe difficult's not the right word, but it definitely was a challenge to myself. And that is the time or the decision that I had to make on pivoting our business into the oral surgery space. And I think when you're talking about pivoting a company, first of all, I read a book, Good to Great by Jim Collins, a while back, and it's something that's kind of ingrained in my mind since reading that book. And that is, if you look at the average successful company out there, the Fortune 500 businesses of the world, on average, a company that exists today has made 5 to 7 pivots in the marketplace to get to where they are now. And I think that that's a very real thing that you have to remember when you are growing a business. And that is, you can't wake up one day, start a business, and have the naivety to think that your idea that you thought on day one is the ticket to growing a $500 million business. And the reality is, you're going to start making a product. You're going to do the best that you can in that process until you start getting feedback from the marketplace. At which point, you then have to decide, are you going to tweak your product? Are you going to improve your product? Are you going to scrap a product entirely? Are you going to pick a different demographic to focus on? But something is going to change. You're going to, once you start engaging in that world, you're going to realize where some weaknesses are that maybe you could fill that gap on. So that, I think, is why companies pivot so much. And the other thing is that pivots oftentimes are massive. They don't, it's not like one day you're creating pencils and the next day you decide that your business is going to create pens. It's more like one day you're creating pencils and the next day you decide that you should be making paper products instead. So you've got to scrap all of your material, all of your machines, and get out of that, and you're making paper products. Or potentially, one of the businesses that I remember reading about in there, they had a whole bunch of paper mills, and they ended up selling all the paper mills and moving over to a digital market because they saw the market changing. And that's a drastic pivot for them. They moved over to the digital market while all the other paper companies were trying to cling on and hang on to the market that they were comfortable with. And that company in the digital space ended up growing, and then 5 years later buying out all of the paper mills for pennies on the dollar that they sold them for, because they were now in a space that had taken off and grown. So as far as pivoting a business, I feel like in our history, we started out as a video production company. And even before that, I guess I would say, we really started out as a drone company. That was the first camera that I bought. And the first pivot that we made was away from drones specifically to more production-based work. So we hired on some more talented people, and then we started producing videos. And then the second pivot that our business made was when we transitioned from just a production company to a digital agency that was assisting people with websites and video, and then creative skills. So that was, can't remember what the first client was that we had, but we made a definitive decision to say we are no longer a production company, we were actually a digital agency. So then we switched over to doing websites in addition to that. And then we expanded our scope of offering again and became a branding and advertising company. And that was not necessarily a pivot from a digital marketing company, but adding in an additional factor of branding into the mix. And then the most recent and drastic pivot that we have made, which is what led us to where we are today, and that is deciding to focus on oral surgery in particular. And ever since I have started reading heavily and being a part of various business groups, the one thing that I've seen and heard example after example, there is no $1 million, $100 million, or $1 billion business that doesn't have some niche of some sort. They have something that they figured out how to do very well. And I guess I should say there may be one or two companies that don't have a niche, but if you are going to be successful, when you are growing, you have to know what the thing is that you are going to do better than anybody else. And especially when you're going up against these billion-dollar giants and you're a little tiny startup that's trying to like squirm your way into a space, you have to focus on one thing that you're going to provide better than anyone else, serve that client and that need very, very well. And then as you start gaining traction, then you can start branching outward into other parallel markets. So right now we have made the decision to go into oral surgery in particular. The crazy thing though is that for the last 3 months I have been actively saying no to business that is not oral surgeons, or is not an oral surgery office or something like that. That has been one of the most challenging things for me in business, because I have a belief that we are going and trying to pursue a niche in oral surgery, but I am not sure if it's actually going to pay off. And I don't know if this decision to go into oral surgery is going to be the death of our company, or if it's going to be the thing that takes off. But I know that if I don't make a decision and if I don't pick a niche, then I will ultimately end up failing anyways, just because there's no the inefficiencies that come out of a lack of niche are too great to scale. So it's a requirement to find a niche in order to have the chance of becoming successful, but just picking a niche does not guarantee that you will be successful. So as we are moving forward and advancing, I know that we have to keep up the intensity of the work that we're doing. We have to stay focused. We have to continue to hustle, and we have to really focus on serving oral surgery in particular better than any of the companies that are out there right now. And it's possible that we may need to focus on a particular aspect of oral surgery marketing, and maybe our niche is not oral surgeons, but it's potentially the pain point that oral surgeons have that other doctors also have. So it's hard to say what the next couple months are going to look like, but right now what we are doing and what we are focusing on is getting another client in oral surgery so that we can begin working alongside them and validating the processes that we are creating, and then start selling those to more people. But if you look at our website right now, everything that we're doing is oral surgeon related. All the white papers that we're doing is oral surgery related. These videos in our YouTube channel and everything is all focused on oral surgeons, and we are doing everything in our power to really drive home and provide value to oral surgeons in this space and help them grow their business. So as far as pivoting a company, that's where I would say the focus is you pivot to hopefully get closer to your niche as you're trying to grow vertically into a market. And you might have to pivot several times to find the correct niche, but pivoting is an essential aspect to the growth of a company. And if you refuse to pivot or you ignore the market, I would say you have a very, very low chance of ultimately succeeding in business.